following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up, to stand up and fight back.
Welcome to Speak Up. I'm Kevin Avard, your host, and today I'm joined with Gary Daniels. He's the Senate candidate here in New Hampshire, District 11, and I want to welcome you to the show. Gary, thank you very much for coming on.
Pleased to be here.
Gary, you got a long history in serving New Hampshire. You served in many capacities, recently as a state rep.
I'm actually in my 18th year as a state rep. Also at the local level, my 12th year as a selectman in Milford. And previous to that, spent 6 years on the school board and 6 years as school district moderator. So I've been involved for about the last 24 years.
So you really know what makes New Hampshire tick. And as a selectman, what does that help you bring to the table if you as running for a senator?
There really is a keen sense that you pick up by serving at the local level. A lot of times in Concord, we seem to be separated from the local level. Serving as selectman and school board, I've picked up a very keen sense of how what I do at the state level is going to affect my constituents at the local level. And I think that has greatly increased my effectiveness as a state legislator.
Right. I know I served up in the Franklin area as city council. Same thing, basically. And you would hear from time to time, well, it all depends on what the state does. You know, you hear that, and there has to be a balance in your decision making. Well, if we do this, we're not really sure what the state's going to do. We're not sure what the state budget's going to do, and so you got to kind of know what's going on. So it does give you kind of that ear to the ground feeling of what the people are saying, what the needs are of the community.
Well, you know what we do every year when the selectmen set their goals? One of the things we include in there, we take a look and say, what things do we need the state to clear out as barriers to us accomplishing what we need to at the local level?
Right.
And each year I've brought in probably 3 to 5 different bills that would help our community get past hurdles that the state seems to be obstructing.
Right.
And so that's something that I could bring to each of my Senate towns, is working with the select boards in each of those towns to clear away those barriers so that selectmen and school board can accomplish the things that they need to at the local level.
Right. What do you sense are some of the priorities? Do you feel that the property rights are being attacked from on the state level, or?
I think property rights have actually been under attack for a long time. I think it was back in 1993 I filed a Private Property Protection Act that was going to change the way that property rights were looked at, in that if so much regulation was placed on your properties such that more than 50% of the use of that was lost to the individual, then they would have the right to say that this land had been taken for the public use, and have I compensated for that taking.
A fair and just compensation. Right.
That bill, when it went to the legislature at that time, I think was vacated by 2 or 3 different committees before it finally ended up in one, and the bill unfortunately ended up dying. But that consistent grab of your private property rights over time has been a problem, and I'm seeing that now. I represent the float district of Hollis, Milford, Mont, Vernon, and New Boston.
Isn't there a pipeline being proposed to go
Right
through
in
there?
Hollis right now, that's a big issue, is that Tennessee Pipeline is proposing to put a line directly through Hollis to hook into southern Merrimack.
Wouldn't it be more effective to just go up Route 3?
One would think so.
What's the argument against that?
I'm guessing the path of least resistance. And of course, a lot of it comes down to money. If they put it up beside Route 3, there's probably a lot you would need in the way of police details and public works. And then again, an alternate route might be to run it along Route 13, where there isn't you don't have the highway structure, probably less. But then when you're cutting across conservation, then you don't have to worry about those details.
Right.
But they're completely ignoring the fact that Hollis residents have put over $30 million into conservation land.
Right.
And
they want it to be pristine.
yeah, and I mean, this is going right through Beaver Brook, which is their prime conservation. So,
And of course, there's a certain degree of leakage that's acceptable, and we're, again, we're all for helping the infrastructure here in New Hampshire, but doesn't it seem like it's a good idea to start looking at Route 3 as maybe making it a main corridor for tapping in for like the Northern Pass and gas lines to go up and maybe put it underground, maybe on a long-term basis?
well, the Northern Pass is an interesting project because I'm not one that would advocate for eminent domain in that. But if they can resolve that 30 miles of Northland that's under contention right now, I'm looking at it from a little bit different perspective, and that's from the technology point of view. Because my understanding is that PSNH lays fiber optic in their rights of way. So we have the opportunity to have fiber optic laid from the Canadian border to Deerfield.
Wow.
Thinking in terms of economics, which has been my background in the legislature on the Labor Committee,
Right.
we have a chance to re-energize the northern part of the state through this technology. I mean, maybe take the call centers that are now going offshore, bring them to northern New Hampshire.
Right.
Likewise, I see it opening a whole new realm of possibilities for education, where maybe if you have a school that you have a student that's ready to take advanced calculus,
Right.
you're not going to hire a $65,000 teacher to come in to teach 1 or 2 kids. However, you may take two students from one school, maybe 5 from a city school, another 3, and maybe from 8 different locations, you put together a virtual classroom
Right.
of the kids that are ready to take advanced calculus. You go out, you find the best teacher to teach that, and you've created that virtual classroom. So what I'd like to do is see the state get to a point where instead of putting out money to bricks and mortar, because we're seeing a lot enrollment in a lot of the schools go down, that we start taking this money and maybe laying infrastructure, fiber optic infrastructure, so that schools can connect together with other schools
Right.
and create these virtual classrooms. I think that's the education
Got to keep up with the times to some. Just thinking about the energy. Today, I just heard a report that there might be some Russian involvement into our grid. I mean, there were cyber attacks, and that's troubling. I'm frightened about that. And recently, there were some attacks on some of our electrical grids out west. We need infrastructure. We got to build it up. They're talking about closing the coal plant. That means our energy prices are going to go up, which is going to kill our economy. We have to fix the cost of energy. It's a huge problem here in New Hampshire. Why would a business want to come here?
Well, and that's exactly the point, is that it seems like, at least for the last 8 years that I was in, I was in 10 years prior to that, but it seems 6 out of the last 8 years we've done everything we can to drive business out of the state. We have given them no incentive to stay in the state, to come here, to build, to expand. Instead, we just tend to pile more and more regulation on them.
Right.
So much so that, you really start to feel that government is trying to run the business where they have no vested interest in that business. But they're telling employers who they can and can't hire. They're telling them what they have to pay employees. I mean, I believe that employers should have the freedom to run their business, and as long as they're treating their employees fairly and safely,
Right.
then give that employer the opportunity to succeed. It's really what it's all about, is giving them the opportunity, because businesses have decisions, and a lot of those decisions for some businesses in the last few years have been to go to other states where there's more freedom.
And where there's liberty. One of the things I really came across recently, Steve Valancourt posted something about the 9% increased budget for Hillsborough. Why aren't we hearing about that in the news? Taxpayers are going to have to pay this 9% increase, right? When we were in 2010 through 12, we cut the budget. We didn't increase it in Hillsborough anyway, and no harm to the taxpayers. I think we even had a surplus, because
we still do have a surplus
because of what we did in 2010 through 12.
Actually, it goes back further than that, but the commissioners have been pretty good on using that conservatively.
But now we have this tax, a gas tax, and now we have a 9% Hillsborough County tax. What's next? The cost of energy is going up. People need an answer on how we're going to lower the prices, attract more businesses into our state. What would you do to attract more businesses?
Well, I think first of all, we ought to start as a state prioritizing the things that constitutionally we have to take care of. We started to do that in 11 to 12. We cut $1.2 billion out of the budget, but in this last term, another $700 to $800 million has been put back in. I mean, the state needs to learn to live within its means. We are involved in a lot of places that we want to be, as opposed to we should be. There are other things that need priority. The highway fund is a perfect example. I mean, we talked about the gas tax. Now, as I was filling up today, it kind of struck me. I go to buy gas at figuring that if you're paying $3.59.9 per gallon, and I'm thinking, no one is going to add 4.2 cents because you're never going to see 263.1.
Right. So they capped it, rounded off.
They're probably going to round it up to 5 cents.
Right.
There may be a few that will eat the 0.2%, but it's one of those things we don't stop to think about as we're debating it. But the reality is, I don't think you'll find a station out there.
Wasn't there an amendment to allocate that extra tax to the bridges, to the highways?
Yeah, I actually co-sponsored an amendment, because right now, and I've heard varying figures, but I've heard as much as $75 million is leaking out of the highway fund bucket.
To what?
To places like Fish and Game, Department of Safety, Department of Transportation, the court system. And so the amendment that I co-sponsored, and this was last term, was to say, if we're going to have this tax, then 100% of it has to be used on roads and bridges. I mean,
Why is the court tapping into this?
Because the tickets that people get from on the highways and stuff like that, it takes up court time. It's really kind of stretching, but departments see it as places where they can grab and find there's just little relationship with the roads, and therefore fund it. I mean, my preference would be that every department goes before fiscal or finance,
right,
and justifies the budget that they're asking for, and that the gas and the toll money go into the highway fund, and we fix the roads and bridges, which indeed need fixing.
Oh, they do, and they've been needing it for some time. Talk to me a little bit about Common Core in educational choice. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think education should be kept at the local level. I don't have a problem with the state putting some standards in, but the problem I have is that there's a disconnect, And I truly believe that the most effective government works best closest to the people, which is at the local level.
Right.
So over the course of the 18 years I've been in the House, I've seen times where the Department of Education or the Board of Education have put rules in that schools have to follow, but those have become so onerous that the legislature would then pass a law to change that rule into something that they wanted, as opposed to the way the board was going with the education.
Right. I asked that because recently up in Guilford there was a school board meeting.
Yeah.
And a gentleman was surprised to read about 16 minutes, page 313, about it was required reading. The parents were not notified, and if you read that book, you'd be outraged as on any level. I wouldn't read it on this TV show. And yet, he was handcuffed. It made Fox News, the whole 9 yards, because he was upset. Is there a different tone in the school boards that is that intolerant to people at this point? Are you seeing that at all?
It probably varies from school board to school board.
Are you sensing a certain frustration, though, from parents?
Well, I've certainly heard the frustration from parents, and particularly with Common Core.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have looked over some of the things myself, and I've always thought that one of the major problems with the educational system is that we don't involve the parents enough.
Mm-hmm.
And hence, when students graduate, they go on to college, we see a large amount of remedial courses that need to be taken. And now along comes Common Core, that someone with a high degree looks at and can't figure out. So how in the world are they supposed to help their student, their child?
Right. I understand the general concept that you want to improve education. Maybe with the math, they want to go deeper and all that kind of, that's fine. But not all the students can do that. Not all the students, you can't do a cookie cutter situation. I served on the Advanced Education of Manufacturers. Senator Molly Kelly was the chair of the committee. And for a brief time, I sat on that. And one of the things that the manufacturers were pounding on the table, we just want people to do simple arithmetic. There are jobs out there starting at $35,000, $40,000, $75,000 if the kids can do simple arithmetic. What we'll do, we'll hire them right out of high school, we'll let them mature a little bit, and then we'll pay for their college. Because some of this stuff is out there. I mean, you look at it, I've looked at some of these examples, and I don't want to feel stupid, but when your 9-year-older says, can you help me with this? Or no, I don't know where to go with that. How did you get there? And I'm not the only one, so, and I've asked teachers, I've asked math teachers, and they can see that, yes, they're going deeper. And okay, that's wonderful, but you got to lay a foundation for that deeper, and it's not there. So then you get this cookie cutter situation, and then the parents are scratching their head, what are you doing? And then they don't have a say. So that's what I'm hearing, and I don't know if you've experienced the same thing.
I've experienced something that kind of connects into that from the business side. I participated in the BIA roundtable that we had a couple weeks ago up at Hitchener Manufacturing in Milford. And one of the things they talked about was just that thing, is that, the businesses want the students coming out of school, but the students don't seem to have the education that the businesses need.
They're not work ready. They haven't been trained on the basic skills.
The other thing too is if you have somebody come up, a child come up and they want to go into biology, not biology or
biochemist or
exactly.
I know what you're talking about.
Then we don't necessarily have those businesses in New Hampshire. They exist down in the 128 area of Boston.
And why won't they come to New Hampshire, by the way?
Well, why would they come to New Hampshire is really the question. But that's one of the things that I want to change, is that, for a number of years now, I've been on the Labor Committee for my full 18 years, so I have the history that goes back to 1990. And a lot of the things that we do are cyclical. You know, you stay there long enough and you make some progress, and then legislatures change and you start seeing things gravitate toward what they were before. So one of the things that I can bring to the table in the Senate is that history on things that we have tried and things that we have done. We overhauled workers' compensation in 1994. I mean, that became a model for many states throughout the country. It took a summer of the committee sitting down and going through that and working with business. But now here we are some 20 years later, and we have some of the highest workers' compensation rates around, and therefore the businesses can't handle
And
those.
that'll kill the small businesses big time.
Exactly.
You know, they just think, you know, okay, you got all this startup stuff, you're going to just hire 3 or 4 employees, and you look at your bill, and they're going by your gross pay, and you're scratching your head, well, when do I start making money, right?
Oh, and we tried to. I filed a bill this time, working with the Workers' Comp Advisory Committee to try to address a number of those things. That got as far, we got it out of the House, it got as far as the Senate. They basically took all tenets off except for one thing, and you know, the bill ended up dying in a committee of conference.
Well, you have, obviously, you have a lot of, you can bring a lot of continuity from your experiences from all the local level to the state into the Senate, and it sounds like a perfect match. And how's the campaign going?
Campaign's going great.
Good.
You know, it's always fun getting out and meeting people. Obviously, a very busy time right now, but we're really excited. We'll be getting our, well, we do have our website up already at garydaniels.org, and we'll be getting out more information to people, becoming more and more visible throughout the communities in the weeks to come.
They can contact you directly through the website?
They can contact me. All my contact information is on the website.
Okay. And it's Gary Daniels?
garydaniels.org.
That's simple enough.
That's very simple.
Very easy.
Even I can remember it.
That's District 11?
That's District 11,
And where is that territory?
That's Wilton, Milford, Amherst, and Merrimack.
Okay, interesting. And do you have any events coming up soon that people...
Well,
they'll be on the website.
Well, I'm in 2 parades on Friday.
Come say hi.
That's that's the Amherst parade at 10 o'clock in Amherst and 1 o'clock in Merrimack. And then Saturday, I will be out at the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers picnic out in Hillsborough. That's always a fun time out there with Ed Nail and his group. And just different speaking engagements. I think on the, they changed the date, it's the 10th now of July. I'll be up speaking to the Wilton GOP group. So
your plate's full. And just officially, I definitely endorse Gary. I like your tenure. I like your whole disposition. And you're an even keel type of individual. I'm more of the excitable kind, and I don't hide that. I wear my heart out on my sleeve. But I think what we need is that type of continuity, somebody who has that kind of background. And I don't endorse lightly. And so you definitely have my endorsement.
Well, I thank you very much for that.
My pleasure. Come back on the show later on and let us know how things are working out, if there are any events that you want to let people know about. Again, it's garydaniels.org, and we'll hopefully see you up there in the big time, into the Senate.
Appreciate that.
All right. And thanks for watching Speak Up. If you have any questions, please contact Gary, and I definitely give 2 thumbs up. So until next week, thanks for watching. If you would like to be a guest on Speak Up, please contact me at speakupnh@gmail.com. We'll help you be heard.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.